homework.
It is. You ready? Yep. Good evening. The hour being 7 o'clock, January 13th, 2020. Welcome to the City of Laconia City Council meeting. When you are ready, we will start the meeting and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd ask Councilor Cheney to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're joined at the table this evening by Recording Secretary Cheryl Hebert, and I'd ask City Clerk Hebert to call the roll.
Councilor Cheney?
Here.
Councilor Bounds?
Councilor Bounds had called earlier this evening and indicated he might not be able to make it because of the weather.
Councilor Littman?
I'm present.
Councilor Haynes?
Here.
Councilor Hamel?
Present.
Councilor Felch?
Here.
Mayor Hosmer?
Present. Thank you. Staff in attendance tonight, we have City Manager Scott Myers and Finance Director Glenn Smith at the table with us. Let's see, the first item on the agenda is the acceptance of minutes from previous meetings. We have the regular meeting minutes of December 23rd, 2019. The minutes of the meeting were distributed to the City Council on Thursday, December 26th, 2019. With no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. Second of all, we have minutes from special meeting, the special meeting of January 9th, 2020. The minutes of the meeting were distributed to the City Council on Friday, January 10th, 2020. The City Clerk, having received no corrections or changes, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. We're on to consent and action items. Under 8A, it's a request to establish rental fees for Boardwalk and Weirs Boulevard vending spaces for Laconia Motorcycle Week 2020. Last year, the City Council confirmed the following rental fees for vendor spaces for Laconia Motorcycle Week 2019 as follows. 10 by 12 Boardwalk vending spaces, $1,500 each. 90-foot block of space, which is occupied by Laconia Motorcycle Week Association. There's no charge. Weirs Boulevard has 6 10 by 12 spaces at $550 each, or one 12 by 75 space for $2,000. We're in the process of contacting last year's vendors to see if they would like to rent a space again this year. And we would like to confirm with the council that the rental fees for this year's event. I'm looking for a motion right now from the council to approve rental fees for Laconia Motorcycle Week 2020, vending spaces located on the Boardwalk in Weirs Boulevard as presented. So moved by Councilor Hamel, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Is there any discussion? Ready for the vote? All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? It is 5 votes in the affirmative, none opposed. The motion passes. We're moving along quickly now. This is going really well. Thank you. Thank you. Can't believe we've gone almost through the first page. I haven't screwed anything up yet, but.
Still plenty of time, man.
All right, Councilor Cheney. Next item is citizens' comments for matters not on tonight's agenda. If you have something that you'd like to discuss and present to the City Council and it's not an action item on the agenda, come forward, introduce yourselves, perhaps reintroduce yourselves, Representative.
I would
Got
just
all
like
the
to
work and
say,
tie.
thank you. I would just like to say, welcome. That's it.
Thank you very much, Representative St. Clair. I appreciate that very much. If that's all under citizens' comments for matters not on the agenda, we'll move forward to interviews under number 10A. The first interview is Bruce Knurr, seeking reappointment as an alternate member of the Library Board of Trustees to a term expiring at the end of March 2021. Welcome. Please step forward. Nice to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations on your victory, and may your tenure be one marked by successes and good news for the people of Laconia.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, very much so. As indicated on the staff report we all have before us, Mr. Knurr is currently an alternate on the Library Board of Trustees. His term expires at the end of March 2020. He's requesting reappointment. Alternates to the Library Board of Trustees serve for one-year terms. There are 2 alternate positions that are expiring, including Mr. Knurr's, and 1 vacant alternate position on the board. As you know, interviews of individuals applying for reappointment or for reappointment to various boards and commissions will be held at this meeting. Appointments will be made at our meeting on January 27th, 2020. So I'd ask the councilors if they have any questions for this interview period for Mr. Knurr. Councilor Hamel?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I want to thank you for stepping forward again and being on the board of the library. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir.
Councilor Lippman?
Express the same sentiments. It seems almost like yesterday that you were here before us telling us about what you wanted to do, and appreciate your standing up again and coming forward to continue. Is there anything you'd like to share with us that you learned over the past year that you'd like to take forward into the next year?
Thank you, Councilor Lippman. Actually, the thought on my mind tonight segues with something the mayor had said, or that I read in the paper the other day. And as always, I go back to the statutes about the library and its purpose as seen by the legislature in the past. And there is a definite connection between the work of the library and the work of the schools. And I look forward to helping as I can to explore how that connection might be strengthened, because it's always been my conclusion that the library patron of the future is sitting in the school system right now. And the sooner they are able to appreciate and use the library and grow into the patron, well, someday probably won't be me, but they'll be standing here talking to you about serving in a similar capacity. So thank you again. And I'll, if there aren't any other questions, I'll let you get on with the other business and await your decision at the next meeting, I think it is, or 2 meetings.
Mr. Knurr, thank you very much for your willingness to serve, and I think you put it very well, the importance of a library and to our city and to the youth of our city, and thank you. So as you know, you do not have to attend the next meeting on the 27th. You're certainly more than welcome to attend when we'll be voting on your reappointment.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I promised Mrs. Knurr I'd be with her out of town on the 27th, so, but thank you for your consideration. Good night.
Thank you. A second interview tonight is Marie Bradley, seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Library Board of Trustees to a term expiring at the end of March 2023. Marie Bradley is currently a regular member of the Library Board of Trustees. Her term expires at the end of March 2020, and she is requesting reappointment. As you know, and if you've heard us already say, interviews are tonight, so we're very pleased to have you here and happy to see you reapplying. And appointments will be made at our following meeting of January 27th. So I will open this up to questions from the council for Marie Bradley. Questions or comments? Councilor Lippman.
Thank you again, Marie, for volunteering to be on the board. Anything you'd like to share with us in terms of what you want to take forward in your next term?
Well, I wanted to reiterate congratulations to the new mayor, Mayor Hosmer.
Thank you.
And to the new councilor, Mr. Felch.
Thank you.
And to all the city councilors. I feel the same way as Bruce. We're looking to bring more young people into the library, and a good way is through the schools. But right now, we're also involved. I've been working with our chairman and our librarian. We want to update the children's library and make it more child-friendly, so that young mothers with children start to bring their children in there, get them used to coming to the library, so that as they go through the younger years, through school, that someday they become permanent patrons of our fabulous library. So that's what I'd like to share with you, what we're working on right now.
Counselor Hamel.
No questions, just a comment, but I want to thank you, Marie, for being on the different committees that you are on and serving Laconia for as long as you have. It's very much appreciated.
Oh, well,
Thank
it's
you.
been a pleasure. I love Laconia, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie, for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
So, moving on. Brings us to the mayor's report, number 15, which is just fantastic. A couple of things I would like to go over. First and foremost, I've distributed to council members the Laconia, my appointments for Laconia City liaisons for years 2020, 2021, as well as Laconia City Council committees for 2020 and 2021. And starting off with the liaisons, to the Belknap Economic Development Council, Councilor Lippman. Capital Improvement Projects, Councilor Hamel. Heritage Commission, Councilor Haynes. Human Relations is the Mayor's Committee, and I'll be serving on that. Lakes Region Public Access, Councilor Bounds. Library, Councilor Felch. Parks and Recreation Commissioner, Councilor Hamel. Planning Board, Councilor Bounds, with the alternate being Councilor Cheney. Police Commission, Councilor Cheney. Laconia Motorcycle Week, Councilor Felch. Water Commission, I would like to remain on the Water Commission for the initial portion of 2020. As we know, we're in the process of interviewing and hiring a new superintendent. It's a process we started while I was on the commission. I'd like to remain on for the next couple of months and maybe at that point transition with another member of the council. The Laconia City Council committees for 2021. The Finance Committee will be chaired by Councilor Lippman. He'll be accompanied by Councilor Cheney and Councilor Hamel. Government Operations will be chaired by Councilor Bounds. He'll be joined by Councilor Cheney, Councilor Felch. Land and Buildings will be chaired by Councilor Hamel, joined by Councilor Haynes and Councilor Felch. Public Safety will be chaired by Councilor Cheney, joined by Councilor Bounds and Councilor Lippman. And Public Works will be chaired by Councilor Haynes, joined by Councilor Felch and Councilor Bounds as well. Those are hot off the press this afternoon. I don't know if anybody has any comments on that or feedback. I want to express, I had an opportunity to speak to all of you now about your positions as liaisons and committee members, and I want to thank all of you for being amenable to suggestions and ideas and being willing to serve on these committees and as a liaison, so thank you. I was thinking if any of you don't want to serve on a particular, as a liaison or as a committee, now would be the perfect time to assign Councilor Bounds. He may be at home watching. If not, it would be a nice surprise for him tomorrow. So speak now or hold your peace. Second, in regards to the mayor's report, And I will distribute this as well. This is in regards to the Lakeshore Redevelopment Planning Commission. As you know, we've had a working group associated with what was known as the old Lakes, the old state school property. It is now, and was named the Lakeshore Redevelopment Planning Commission, has been staffed and chaired by some very able people. And it's really at the point now where it has to progress into what we might call the next stage of the commission. I want to express my appreciation to Representative Spanos, who was the prime sponsor of House Bill 1224-FN, which is an appropriation, a bill seeking an appropriation of $850,000, or a total of $1.7 million over the biennium, to continue the work of the Planning Commission. This is a bill that will be heard in House Finance on the 21st of January at 10:30 a.m. It's going to be heard in the Legislative Office Building, rooms 210-211. I think it's really a terrific opportunity to get this commission with the finances they need to continue their work, because I think it represents so much to our community right here. I also am very appreciative of not only Representative Spanos, but Representative Hewitt, who are both on the Finance Committee and are co-sponsors of this bill. I'd also like to express my appreciation to Representative St. Clair and Representative Tilton, Senator Morse, and Senator French, who's our senator representing Laconia, for co-sponsoring this bill. I think this bill is worthy of our support as a council, simply because if we want to see that property really fulfill its potential, now is the time to sort of take those next steps and continue some of our due diligence, the state's due diligence and the commission's due diligence as to what needs to be done to make it marketable for its highest and best use. So I will probably be at the State House that day and sign in attendance and in support of the bill. I don't know if I'll be offering any testimony at the time. I certainly will be available to do so. It would be great if perhaps we could put together a letter endorsing this bill on behalf of Laconia City Council that I'd be happy to hand in that day and share with the committee members, the House Finance Committee members. Any thoughts on that and discussion?
Want a motion to, that we're all in support of the council going on record for this bill?
Terrific. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Councilor Haynes, seconding. Any further discussion on this? I guess we would now, perhaps City Manager Myers would help us draft that letter.
I will draft that and get a copy to you for comments and finalizing, and we'll make enough copies to go down to the committee meeting that day as well.
Terrific. And if anyone would like to join me there that day, I'd be happy to meet you there and go about our work.
What day is that again?
It's it's January 21st. The hearing starts at 10:30 a.m. in the Legislative Office Building. 21st being Tuesday.
We did a second motion.
We did a second motion.
Not a vote yet.
Right. So, all those in favor of the motion proposed by Councilor Lippman, raise your hand. Opposed? It's 5 in the affirmative. Motion passes.
What time was that, Mayor?
Sure. 10:30.
Okay.
As far as Mayor's report and comments, I just want to thank Cheryl Hebert, Nancy Brown, your staffs, everyone in the city, that the police department, their color guard, and all the work that went into the inauguration of last week. I think it was it was really a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me, and I thought all of you did a tremendous job. It was an overwhelming success because of all the work that you all put in, and I just want to say thank you. I also want to go on the record as well and say how much, I'd like to think I speak for all of you, how appreciative we are of the students from Laconia High School who volunteered. They really helped make it a special. Maya Minnick, who sung the Star Spangled Banner, which was absolutely fantastic. You know, really, we're so fortunate to have these folks in our community, and it was nice to see our community come together on Thursday. So just an appreciation on my behalf for all of the work that went into it. Thank you. Moving on from the mayor's report, are there any committee reports this evening? Seeing none, I'll move on to the liaison reports. Yes, Councilor Cheney.
Excuse me. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Police Commission, the chief and his senior staff for the effort they've put in. We've had a number of discussions about trying to see more visibility of the police department, and it's tough with all the assignments they have, but I've asked them to make every effort to have more motor vehicle activity, more visibility. And they made a big push. Last year, this would now be the month of November, there were 167 car stops. This year, 481. I think is a significant increase in activity and observation. That is to say, citizens see them out there doing it. At the same time, the police department's budget is 2% below budget, which I think is also commendable. And lastly, I'd thank them all for putting up with me, because I'm probably a nag. My wife tells me that, so
It's probably true then.
it probably is. And if it wasn't, I wouldn't dare argue with it. Anyways, I just want to compliment Chief Canfield, his staff, and certainly the Police Commission for the effort they put in to increase visibility like that. There's more to be done, they feel, but this is certainly a good step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cheney, and so noted. Any other liaison? What? Yes, Councilor Hamel.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We had our first meeting on the Colonial last Tuesday. Donna Pagetstone was there, the architect, engineer, Belknap County Economic, myself. And basically, it's just starting. They've have a tremendous amount of staging in there that goes from the floor to the ceilings, both on the lower deck and the balcony. This is for the person who is there that's going to be redoing the frescoes and the plastering of the intricate artwork that's there. That'll be a 5 to 6 month period to do that. Roofers, plumbers are going to be showing up. They do have temporary or a auxiliary heat in the building right now. They did find some concrete down in the basement that have PVCs in them, so they're addressing that on how to remove it. So that is in the process. We found out that we had to put in they cut all power to the building and have a secondary power in there now so that the people doing the demolition don't grab onto a live wire, so the whole building has been cut off from electricity other than the secondary supply being brought in. So we found out that we had to put in a temporary alarm system, which we didn't know about, which is going to cost about $6,500, which is not reusable. So we have to address that. Other than that, there's a meeting tomorrow morning at 9, so this is going to be a weekly thing, weekly meeting. And we should be getting some financials on how things are going, probably within the next month. So things are moving along, and there was a lot of people in there today. I took a walk through, and they're moving ahead. So that's where we are on that for now.
Good. Thank you very much, Councilor Hamill. I appreciate you keeping, not necessarily keeping an eye on it, but keeping us abreast of everything that's going on. I know you're downtown quite a bit and watching the work, and I think we all appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other liaison reports? Okay, moving on to number 18. This is the opportunity for citizens to comment on current agenda items. Opportunity to speak. Seeing no one offering to speak, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So included in your packet for the first meeting of the month is the Financial and Operational Trends Report. I'll run through it in a little bit more detail on a few items in particular. So you see the construction value report from building permits. We did not have the November data for you last month, so that's included. So you've got November and now all the way through December. So we're running about $1 million behind the pace of new construction value where we were at the same time a year ago, and it's several $1 million down from where we were 2 years ago. The new construction value year, if you will, ties in with the New Hampshire Department of Revenue, so it runs from April 1st until March 31st. So we will still have the months of January, February, and March to complete the total value of new construction for the year. This is one of the components that we use when we put together our tax cap calculation. It's the value of new building permits, less any demolition, and then also the inflation number, the consumer price index number for the prior 12 months. That CPI number, I believe, is coming out tomorrow, so we'll have 12 months for the month of December, so we'll have 12 months completed, and we'll know that number tomorrow and where we end up for the year on that. I do want to point out we had a few demolition permits come in for some homes that we believe are going to be replaced by new construction, and those permits haven't come in yet. So we did see a little bit more demo activity in the, issued in November and December, but we believe the flip side of the coin, if you will, there'll be a few building permits to come in to do home replacements there. You can see the data for fire and EMS. The number of calls is pretty much on par where we were last year. The public assistance data is through our welfare office. You've seen some spikes to it. For the most part, this fiscal year, we've been relatively flat. Glenn did inform me that sometimes things just happen out of our control. In the month of December, we assisted with 4 burials in the month of December. For the whole prior year, we only assisted in a total of 13, so that's a little bit of an anomaly, but under state law, we're required, if there's no other means for assisting with a burial, the city does step in. So that was a bit of a bump on that, but again, to put it in perspective where it was the whole year.
Is it based on the fact that the deceased was a resident of the city? Is that what triggers our obligation?
Resident and no assets, but I'll let Glenn speak to it a little bit more if you would.
Well, this is affirm what Scott just said, resident, and we go through a process to try to determine if there's any other assets that might be used, and if that's not available, then the city steps in.
Thank you.
And there was a dollar amount we're capped in, so it's a simple services provided to it. The police department activities on the top of page 2, and I think Councilor Cheney touched upon some of the increase in the numbers that you've seen there. You can see the property tax collection down toward the bottom of the page is in at a very strong number going back all the way to 2013. In particular, it's at a much stronger position than we were last year, and that just had to do with the timing of property tax bills going out. So this year the bills went out mid to late November with the due date in mid to late December. Last year, due to timing of when the tax rate was set, bills didn't go out until right around December 1st or 2nd, which put the due date into early January. So those who like to come in on the last day, or banks or mortgage companies who are holding escrow and pay it out at the last minute. We're in a strong position. But irregardless of the timing to it, you can see that over the other years, skipping last year, we're still in a much stronger collection position. Motor vehicles, again, we are halfway through the year, and we're basically halfway through our collections. You will note that the amount that we budgeted this year is $200,000 greater than last year's budget. So in terms of dollars, we're slightly ahead of last year's pace. In terms of percent of our budget, we're pretty much right on track. We do typically see where the second half of the year is a little bit busier, in particular the spring months. I'm looking at the clerk, but sometimes I think May and June, there's a lot of lease renewals for whatever reasons with some of the car financing companies. So we see a big uptick in those couple of months for people who lease automobiles. You can see all the overtime data for the various departments on page 3. There's nothing there that jumps out of line or worries us from the financial end at this point. No real changes on the fourth page. You can see the impact fees ticked up just a little bit for certificates of occupancy that were issued late in the year. Everything else is pretty solid. We are now in the new year, so boats will start to be registered. And again, I'd like to remind and encourage Laconia residents, and really anybody in New Hampshire can come in, different than car vehicles. Anybody can register their boat here in City Hall. Not all town halls or city halls are boat agents, but we happen to be one along with some dealers in the area. A few years back, the state got into the business of doing registrations by mail, and while that is an option for people, if you do register directly with the state, less money comes back locally than by registering it locally. So if people have the option, we do encourage boat registrations to be done in person, either at the City Hall or at one of the boat dealers. And we've got 4 or 5 who are registered in the community, 6 or 7. So there's plenty of opportunities to do it on weekends with some of these boat dealers as well if City Hall doesn't work for you. Top of page 5 of the report, Glenn has just added a couple of categories just to try to give you a sense of revenues budgeted for the general fund and where we are tracking on a year-to-date basis, and the same thing with the general fund expenditures and where we are with our expenditures on a year-to-date basis. So just some information for you there. The EMS billing makes up the remainder of the 5th page of the report. I'd like to focus a little bit. We still are showing you last year's revenue numbers. We still are seeing some folks who are on payment schedules are making payments, so that bottom line number of payments received, that $962,000, is up a couple of $1,000s from where we were last month at this time, and this is for all for trips that were done during the prior fiscal year, so July 1 of calendar year 18 through June 30 of calendar year 19. In addition to that, any outstanding accounts after 90 or 120 days where we don't have somebody on a payment schedule or have had any positive contact with them go to a collection agency, and we are starting to see that money come in, not at a great rate, but a little bit stronger the past 2 months. It's been about $2,000 a month, whereas in the early stages it was in the hundreds and not hitting the thousands. So we're hopeful that trend will continue a little bit. Just kind of playing with the numbers a little bit to give you a sense, you can look at the total billable trips in the 18-19 year at 3,550. So divide that into 12 months out of the year. We're doing about 300 billable trips a month would be the average. The ambulance goes on more calls than that. Some of them are not transport. Some of them are to assist other activities within the fire department, but about 300 billable trips a year. If you look at the net charge, that's the makeup of the patients that we transport. So it could be on either of the federal programs, Medicare, Medicaid, could be private insurance. There's folks who have no insurance, might be a workers' comp claim. So collectively, on a trip that we are going to bill for, our blend of business, we bill about $400 a trip. And that's just the makeup of our user base, if you will, on average. Of that $400 a trip, we collect roughly 70% of it. So we get about $270 is the successful collection rate, and you can see at the percent of payments to net charge, you can see 68% is what we've collected. You know, and again, I've indicated a little bit of money coming in through the collection agency and stuff. So about 70% is where we're at. So those are the numbers that are broken down as to what our book of business, if you will, in Laconia looked like for the first 12 months of operating the ambulance. And I see that trend kind of continuing when you look at some of the preliminary results that we have for this year as well. So we can't control how many times we get called, how many billable trips we provide, but those are going to be the general numbers that we're looking at based on our payer mix. Final page of the report is our winter storm cost. You can see we had a lot of small events. We had a lot of freezing rain, a lot of times we were out there salting or sanding. We had the one big event on the Monday and Tuesday leading up to New Year's Eve. That was not a huge amount of snow, but a mix of snow and wintry mix, along with it running pretty much for a 2-day period. We incurred quite a bit of overtime on that one particular event. Doesn't reflect on this report, but as our Public Works Director said to me, Wes Anderson said to me late last week, and we've had more snow squalls in the past week and a half than we probably have in a whole season, and a lot of those have caused, call-outs in the middle of the night for something that when you looked at the weather forecast and items coming out of the National Weather Service, they weren't predicting any precipitation that night, and we've gotten it. So we haven't gotten nailed yet, but we've had a lot of little small nuisance types of things happening there. So that's my report and the details for tonight. Happy to take any questions on that or anything else anyone may have tonight.
I just want to thank you for your work above and beyond on storm cleanup tonight when you were spreading sand when I arrived here. It was,
Other
I
duties
appreciate
other
that.
duties is maybe a sign. We want you all
Yes.
to get in here safely.
Thank you. Councilor Lippman.
I'd like to ask the manager and Dean, the planning director, with respect to the follow-up on the short-term lodging, we had went so far when we passed the ordinance and we talked about dealing with some other issues after that. Could you just give us a status of when we might see something in front of us on that?
Yes, I'll let Dean jump in on that.
Counselor, I believe you're referring to the effort to try to provide a special exception process to add to the short-term rental. I've been talking with legal about that. We are not quite ready, but we will have something before you for the next meeting. We also have before you for the next meeting the fee schedule for the short-term rental applications.
And those will be for a first reading and then being referred to a public hearing. So a vote could occur on that at the first meeting in February.
And I think I saw something in the paper about there being legislation that could override the work that we've done.
There has been a bill submitted that would regulate short-term rentals at the state. Well, let me rephrase that. It basically would not allow cities and towns to regulate short-term rentals from a standpoint of just out prohibiting them. It would allow the cities and towns to do some basic regulations. I don't even believe it's been to a committee yet, so it could get amended, could get not passed by committee, could be any number of things could happen in between now and then. If it were to pass in its present state, it would significantly alter the ordinance that we recently passed.
I think a couple of the major changes. One is in ours, we've got a contact person required who's going to be available locally 24/7, whether that's the owner or the property manager, whoever. This one, I think, just calls basically for you need to provide a name and contact person for the property owner, and it doesn't have any requirement that they have to be responsive. It also limits the ability to go in and do any type of even the limited life safety inspection.
Very, very limited
that we're doing. I think you can only go in and inspect for CO2 detectors and other types of things if you have reason above and beyond that an inspection is warranted, whereas the ordinance we passed called just for the simple basic ones of, fire extinguisher, CO2, smoke detector. If they're using the basement for bedrooms, they have to have the proper, means of egress. We aren't doing a full-blown inspection, but I think those are a couple of the key items that were there, so. Ours is legal and in effect right now, as Dean stated, we don't know what will happen with this one. The effective date, should this one pass, or if it's amended and pass, is not until January 1 of '21. So at a bare minimum, our ordinance is in place and in effect, and we will be moving forward with implementing it.
Please.
Does the municipal association have a position on that legislation?
I don't know if they certainly are watching it because it does impact, and I don't know if there's a specific position that they've adopted through the legislative policy process, but I can certainly follow up on that. I know it was introduced in the Senate, and it'd be a Senate public hearing on it first. I have not seen it. When I looked the other day, I don't think it had been assigned yet, but it may have been now. So I can look at those details, and we'll certainly monitor it. And again, it's sponsored by 3 senators: Senator Bradley, Senator D'Alessandro, and our senator, Senator French, are the 3 sponsors on it. So certainly there's an opportunity to weigh in. I do know, as I think I've said in the past, this is a hot-button issue for several more touristy communities in the state, including Lincoln, Conway, North Conway area, Portsmouth, or at least a few that come to mind pretty readily.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Councilor Cheney.
I had a couple of items. One is, I'm hoping we can spend some time checking the lights in Lakeport Square, because they seem to go off rather readily. I just hope that Public Works can take a look and see if they're functioning the way they ought to be, or is there something we can do to make them more user-friendly?
You're talking about traffic lights?
Yep, I'm sorry, yes. That does make a difference, doesn't it? I mentioned to the manager, I think at our December 23rd or whatever it was meeting, sort of half kiddingly, but now I'd like to bring it up formally, and that is, can we find out if we're taxing for the number of poles that are in the ground in the city of Laconia? Because there are plenty of places where there are 2 poles at the same time, and I suspect those companies only pay for one of those. So I'd like to ask that the manager have someone check to see if the number equals what we're being paid.
Councilor Cheney, would that entail counting all the poles in the city? And no, really, I mean, was that what that
Well,
would
I think
entail?
it might at some point, but you can get a pretty quick idea, I think, by doing Parade Road or Union Avenue or some of those, and find out what they say they're paying for.
I see,
And what
okay.
we have for account. Then if we see there's a substantial difference, we could do a more thorough check. I don't even know what they pay per pole, do you?
That number, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think there was this whole process on utility taxing that finally got some consensus on a statewide basis that there was going to be, if you will, a flat rate per pole or for certain types of infrastructure. Because what has caused some of these utility companies, Eversource and Consolidated in particular, to challenge their taxes is one community might be taxing a pole at $700 value, and another community might be taxing that same pole at a $200 value. So there was some compromise, and I don't think anybody was happy with the outcome, which is probably the sign of a okay compromise, and they've kind of streamlined that to make it consistent. So that number should be readily available.
The last 2 items, I know you've been somewhat involved in the discussions about the crosswalk in the Weirs by Cumberland, I believe. I read the state's position that they want to move it 300 feet down the road. You can go out here on Main Street, and people won't walk 30 feet to get to a crosswalk, never mind 300 feet. And I hope we can suggest to the state they reconsider that position. I don't know if you can make any headway, but it seems silly to me to move it 300 feet down the road just because there's an intersection there. Like I said, you can go on Main Street, and people will step out between cars and cross because they don't want to walk 30 feet to a crosswalk. So to move this, I don't think will accomplish what we're hoping to accomplish. The last thing I have is, you may or may not be aware, there's a shopping cart in the middle of Pearly Pond.
I'll put that on other duties as may be assigned.
Get your galoshes.
It's an odd place to go shopping.
Yes, it is.
Fish is on
I worry that if it melts, it's gonna be at the bottom of the pond. And,
We'll see if we can safely address that.
okay, thank you.
So if I can just touch base, Mr. Mayor, on the crosswalk on Route 3 by the Cumberland Farm. So I did share that with all of you, and I think I wrote in the email to you that common sense, I can't think of what I'm trying to say here. What you would normally do.
Intuition?
I agree. Intuition, whatever, you're not going to walk the 300 feet. I agree. People are going to stop until they see a gap and they're going to cross there. Wes is working up some very rough numbers, but when you read into that and looking at the flashing beacons, the tip downs, putting in street lights around that area, it's not going to be inexpensive. It probably would be somewhat similar even across from the Cumberland Farms. But if there's council guidance to respond back to the state saying we feel that moving it down, people are still going to cross in what seems to be the proper location to them, and they will not use that, and the city council or the city of Laconia might be asking you to reconsider. If there is consensus to do that, I'm happy to do that. But human nature is what I'm trying to say.
Human nature, right.
Human nature.
Yeah. So,
I say.
in which direction do they want to move the walk?
They want to move it south, so in between
Hilliard Road, right?
Hilliard Road
Road
and
across to,
Grant? Warner. So it's just about 300 feet south, and they say there's a better line of sight there. It's more opportunity for drivers to see a flashing beacon and respond to it because the speed limit is 40 miles an hour along there. So that was my first read, is people are not going to walk 300 feet out of the way if they're going across the street from Memory Lane to go to the Cumberland Farms.
Right.
So if
Right,
that's... if
600
that's-
feet, yeah.
Okay, so if that's consensus, that we collectively as the council would like me to respond back and ask for a reconsideration of that for these types of reasons, I'm happy to do that, but
Yes.
I think that's a good suggestion from Councilor Cheney. I guess we'd be inclined to consider a motion on that.
I'd so move.
And second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of city manager drafting such a letter and for the state to reconsider?
And to reconsider them paying for it, too.
Most importantly,
It's their
yes.
highway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
They
that's,
just
it seems to
pass
me
it
that
right
would be the
along.
state's responsibility.
They don't think
the state
so,
was
but-
very clear that we would pay for it in addition, and this might be a concern too, and I shared with you in that email, they are requiring a maintenance agreement for us to be down there plowing in a timely manner, and right now, based on use and population, once we get done with the plowing and opening up the streets, our priority sidewalks are typically in the areas of schools and in the downtown area, and then we work our way. So just based on equipment and demand and people hours, whenever it could be, 3 or 4 days before we get down there to be plowing some of the sidewalks and the weirs. And the state noted that they went by there 3 days after a storm and we hadn't been there, and that's going to be a requirement, for this little stretch of sidewalk, that we've got to tractor a piece of equipment down there to do that. And definitely, this time of year, as we all know, the foot traffic is nowhere near what it is in other parts of the city, and that's why we prioritize.
Certainly. So the vote, 5-0, none opposed, for the city manager to draft the letter. Question, Councilor Hamel?
Yes, may I bring up a sore subject here? Last week, there was signs downtown and Scott and I discussed this, about temporary police no parking that were there for 3 or 4 days, waiting for the city to go remove the snow. I think what happens there is people don't know where to park. If you park in front of one of those signs, you're gonna get a ticket, what's gonna happen? So they venture off and try and find a place to park and then walk back. I know there were circumstances where there was things they had to handle before they could get downtown to do that, but I think we could do a better job looking at the forecast of what day before we're gonna put those signs. I mean, you can kind of tell if there's gonna be 2-3 days in a row that is decent so that you can get there and remove the equipment from the trucks and do all that kind of stuff. But to put them there for 3 to 4 days where nothing happens at all, I think it's just a little bit of a burden for the people to go downtown to try and go to the businesses and things like that, them not knowing if they can park there or not. So hopefully, next time around, we might be able to do a little better job on that.
Yes, and I agree, and as you and I had discussed that, that was a situation where 2 of those nights, the squalls came up, and we were out doing plowing of the streets those days, including one day, Laconia was the only school in the state that had a 2-hour delay because we got dumped on with that. So we had all good intentions because the forecast wasn't for snow. We've talked with staff, and we agree that obviously we want to put them out one day ahead and not impact, but I think in that particular case, we ended up not doing as much snow removal on those 2 days in a row because, for that reason. So we were tied up elsewhere with unanticipated, snow removal type of stuff. But already been addressed, and we're well aware of that.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Okay, I guess that concludes the financial and operational trends report and discussion. I don't believe there's any new business or unfinished business. I think this takes us now to council comments, which sounds like we've been making, but it's wide open again here for council comments. Anyone? You sure, Councilor Cheney?
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. That may bring us right to the conclusion here, if there are no further comments on this. Any other business that maybe come before the council? Councilor Lippman?
Quick question, in terms of a planning retreat meeting, has that been firmed up?
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So still that same afternoon, I'd given you all notice a long time ago to book off Thursday, January 30th at 1 o'clock. We're probably going to push it back 1 hour later, same day, push it back 1 hour. And I just conferred with the mayor tonight. I just found out that the chamber is holding their annual luncheon that day. So I'm going to be asking Nancy to get an email out to all of you, as we typically get a table of 10 for the city and have mayor and councilors come, and then a few department heads will join you depending on how many seats are available. So the lunch is at the Margate this year, and it runs from 12 to 1:30. So our plan would be to move over and start our goal setting at 2 o'clock on that same day,
January 30th.
January 30th, which is a Thursday.
I'm sorry if that's created any confusion on your schedules. I was just speaking with the city manager, and I thought it was important that, since we traditionally have a presence at the Chamber of Commerce lunch, I think it's we should try to do that again. And certainly being absent may not send the right message to the chamber and to local businesses. I think it's a good place for us to be. So hopefully we can start at 2 o'clock and hasn't created too many problems with scheduling. Any other further comments? Anything else come before the city council? So at 7:53, I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming. See you in 2 weeks or less.